Work session in order. Appreciate everyone's patience that has shown up here to listen to this. We have delayed it a bit because Mayor Short cannot be here tonight. Unfortunately, he's ill, and Councilmember Hodges will be here any moment. And he definitely had some very special interests in this discussion. So with that, the meeting, we'll get it started. We'll try to move quickly. And Lisa, hand it over to you to introduce some guests.
Yes, sir. I had the pleasure of meeting with some representatives of the City of Terrell as well as some property owners who have had an agreement with the City of McLendon-Chisholm for years and years. So I'm going to start by introducing John Godwin, and then I'll move on to some others. Let me just pull this up. Hang on. You want to sit at the table? I'd like to introduce John Godwin. John holds a Master of Public Affairs degree from the University of North Texas. He has extensive city management experience dating back to the mid-1980s, working in both Texas and Florida. John spent several years as Assistant City Manager and City Manager of Rowlett, but he has more recently served as the City Manager of Fairview and then Paris, Texas. He's currently working as a special consultant for our neighboring City of Terrell. One of his tasks with Terrell is to organize water and sewer along the Brushy Creek corridor. John's experience with the City of Fairview makes him especially sensitive to our issues here in McLendon-Chisholm. Fairview and McLendon-Chisholm have lots of similarities, both having a rural feel to the community, yet they're surrounded by Hey, it should be back up.
All right.
It appears to be.
First item on the agenda is citizen comments. First one here is Ms. Bodart. Would like to speak? Oh, yeah. Do we have a mic, Lisa?
Oh, yes.
Valerie Bodart, 402 Cattle Barren Drive. I'd like to urge all members of the City Council to vote no on tonight's agenda items 8.6 and 8.7, which repeal the current use of Robert's Rules of Procedure, especially if any member has not read and studied the proposed documents. In my opinion, this document is in direct response to the events on May 12th and will prove to be cumbersome in practice. It also provides overreaching power to the mayor and will limit the constitutional rights of our citizens to free speech. I highly disapprove of the addition of a consent agenda to every future agenda when the City Council has proven that they neither understand nor follow the guidelines for consent agendas as laid out in the Handbook for Mayors and Council Members by the State of Texas. Please do not adopt new resolutions tonight before you understand just what the results will be. I would also like to recommend that the minutes describing citizens' comments be more detailed to give the reader a better understanding of the points that were made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Steinhagen. I'm sorry, I forgot the first time, but if you could state your address whenever you speak. Forgot that with Ms. Bodart.
Good evening, Robert Steinhagen, 304 Pheasant Hill Drive. I first want to speak to the May 12th minutes, as Mrs. Bodart had said. They are not representative at all of what the citizen comments were. Part of Robert's rules in creating minutes is to ensure that a written record is accurate. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be verbatim, but a summary of what was stated, I think, is in order. So I would encourage you not to approve the minutes until that has been rectified. I also want to speak to the Code of Ordinances changes that you're going to be seeing tonight. My concern is that you have the old copy and the new copy. It's very difficult to know what's being changed. My recommendation is that the staff provide you with copies that show strikeouts, additions, that kind of thing, so it's easier for you to make an informed decision about what changes are being made. I also want to highlight, as I was looking at the review of the fire chief's goals for the fire department, his goal is to create a cross-trained fire department where the police is part of our city, and I would continue to encourage you to carefully consider that, not doing that. That to me is, the cost of that is outrageous. Before you move into that, I just ask that you take careful consideration of what that actually costs. Are the citizens going to be any safer? I would argue absolutely not. The evidence, the facts that are out, that are in the ether, prove this fact out. One of the biggest mistakes that one city, I believe it's Fate, it's either Fate or Roy City did, was to create their own police department. It's something they can't go back to. And I think it's important to remember that the Sheriff's Department provides a great service to us. We have a Sheriff's deputy in the back, and they perform a great service. If we ever, as a city, need a dedicated officer, we can pay for that. We don't have to pay for all of the other things that go along with that. If we need 2 officers, we can do that. It's a heck of a lot cheaper. Finally, at the last meeting, I was not able to finish my comments. I was planning to, in addition to thanking Mrs. Wessner and Mrs. Kippett, also to thank you, Mr. Bloom. As I told you in the past, the last time was the first time I addressed the City Council. As I told you, I was going to make a public statement about my appreciation for the fact that when developers for Triple Creek came before the City Council and wanted to create a high-density development right around this City Hall, one of the things that the guy said was, I know this is a really hard decision. You were the only member of City Council who said anything to the close to this, but your words were perfect. You said, it's not a hard decision for me at all. We have a 1.5 acre minimum per home site standard, and I intend to uphold that, and that's important to me. Mr. Bloom, thank you. I think that's important to our citizen. Thank you all, and also thank those of you who served in our nation's military and those present. Our freedom is not free, and I don't take it for granted. Thank you so much.
Next we have Ms. Balcom.
Adrian Balcom, 1518 Forenza Court. The city website has quite a number of documents missing. I realize you want to try to erase history, which is only going to go so far. Regardless of personal vendettas, there is one page that should be on there, and such as the PID information. The new PID administrator contact details should be included on that page. In 2014, when I came to put a contract on my house, the property tax was 9 cents. And after I bought my home and not having internet for about 5 months, I come to find out the city council had gotten into some bonds to build the city hall, which ultimately became a problem for citizens who were unaware it took place. The tax rate jumped to 34 cents, and that was until Robert Steinhagen petitioned for citizens for a tax rollback so that citizens could vote on it at the next election in 2016. That was a history maker for the city. There was not hundreds of people voting prior to that election. The tax rollback won, and the city property tax approved for just over 15 cents. During that time, I was in the middle of working with the city administrator, the developer, and residents of Sonoma Verde. We had a significant amount of problems. One of them was road maintenance and drainage. In June 2016, we ended up getting road repairs done on Forenza, Barolo, and Livorno by the developer. After years of working on a plethora of things in the community, the consistent problem related to the Sonoma Verde development was the responsibilities of the city planner and city engineer. My list of goals as a city council member was to hire qualified people that can meet our city's needs. There were consistent problems that had been rushed under the table by the former building inspector and city administrator. My fellow councilmen were successful in 2019 in awarding a new engineer and city planner. Unfortunately, each of you, excluding Mayor Pro Tem Jim Bloom, approved on a consent agenda on March 24, 2020 to award contracts to the former city planner, Mike Coker, and engineer Dub DeFrey. There was no history prior to that meeting of efforts of reviewing candidates publicly. Did you know that it is an engineer's obligation to advise the City Council and provide recommendations which are based upon current engineering code standards and other guidelines that if they don't, it could put the city at risk and put the city in non-compliance with federal and state standards and requirements? I'm aware of at least 2 homes that have serious foundation problems, and there are multiple homes that have had series of other problems that should never have been green tagged to proceed if an engineer was doing their job. There's also the issue with the gas line that Chisholm Crossing 4 property owners are limited in what they can build on their property. Poor planning. My backyard and countless other backyards have standing water. Some have water flowing in resident backyards. Revolving road repairs are consistently needed in the Sonoma Verde development. You can only go so far to place blame on the general contractor, the builder, and the developer. Who ultimately reviews and does inspection on behalf of the city? Who is the one that gives the okay to proceed the next phase of work? Who is the one that is supposed to hold these crews of people accountable that is not meeting code? After looking back of my years of service and knowing what I know about certain responsibilities, the engineer and city planner has failed the city in many ways. They have only appeared before the City Council a handful of times, although it wasn't in regard to reporting what they should have been reporting. In addition to that, let me remind the City Council that it was Mike Coker who advised the Board of Adjustment to approve the cell tower down on 205 and consulted with the former MCVFD fire chief who was not employed by the City of McLendon-Chisholm and was not TCFP certified. According to the state, the person that the city planner should have contacted back then was the Rockwall County Fire Marshal, which would have been Chief Simmons. Keith Short said in spring of 2018 that the City Council works for the citizen. To be in good faith with the citizens, my hope is that you do the right thing and end any projects with Mike Coker and Dub DeFrey. Also, I did notice that the current city administrator had started working with them prior to awarding the contracts on March 24, 2020. Please put on the next city council agenda to start the process of hiring a qualified city engineer and city planner contractor. Have public candidate interviews as it was done while I was a city council member in 2019. It is not a common practice to reward bad employees and contractors. Most people and businesses reward those who do good work. There has been a history of constant problems of residents complaining about their property, roads, drainage, etc. You need to start looking at the process and follow where it went wrong. Ultimately, this is going to be an issue in the city if you continue to use the city engineer and city planner that you hired back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Donegan. Oh, there you are. Yes, sir. You're next.
Thank you and good evening, Council. Mike Donegan, 2620 Ridge Lake Lane here in McLendon-Chisholm. I just want to, was informed by the city administrator that there's been discussion and a workshop with Terrell on the possible use of a memorandum of understanding to help the city get into an access in terms of water, being able to supply water. And I just want to commend the staff and commend the council for moving forward on that. I think there's an old saying in Texas that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And I'm not saying that that's what we ought to do with water, but I'm just saying it emphasizes the importance of a city being able to control its future destiny with access to being able to provide water. It just gives that much more power in terms of how to deal with developers and impending growth when you're able to supply not only the sewer aspect but also the water. So I just want to say I commend the staff and I commend the city council for analyzing and pursuing that as a potential option. That's a smart, strategic thing to do for the future of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other citizen comments for tonight? All right. With that, citizen comments will be closed. And we will move on to item 7.1, approval of the minutes for the May 12th, 2020 meeting.
No, it's actually referred to as refunding.
I would like to see a little bit more details.
Also, item 6.7, change, we had September 29th as the alternate date for the green event. That should be September 26th.
Anything else? I do agree, Lisa, with Councilmember Hodges and Mr. Steinhagen to a little more detail on the comments. We don't have to do a verbatim, but help us that whenever we're reading this from 8 months from now or whatever, that it would help, whatever it may be. whatever that is.
Shelley is your city secretary.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Talk
All
to
right.
her.
Shelley, if you could add some detail there. Okay. And make the change on October 26th versus the 29th for the green up.
September.
I'm sorry. September. Thank you. September 26th. Anything else from anyone? No? Any motion to approve with changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 12th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes with the changes recommended by council.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Show that unanimous? Let me see. So 8.1, discussion and action regarding a resolution denying the proposed change in rates of Oncor Electric Delivery Company, LLC, requested by Lisa. If you could introduce.
Yes, this is Cindy Tam, our representative from Oncor, and she's going to tell you exactly what this resolution does.
In accordance with the Public Utility Regulatory Act, on April the 3rd, Oncor filed with the Public Utility Commission of Texas and our cities who have retained original jurisdiction, such as the City of McLendon-Chisholm, to make an amendment to our distribution cost recovery factor we refer to as our DCRF. This factor allows utilities such as Oncor to recover certain investments and capital investment that have been made since our last full rate case in 2017. The PUC allows us to file for an amendment to this DCRF once a year, and the goal of this is to smooth the investment recovery over shorter periods rather than opposed to the larger rate impact it would have on customers if we only made adjustments when we went in for a full rate case. So we filed on April the 3rd because by law there is a very short window that we can file each year. We have to file between April 1st and April 8th. And so we filed on April the 3rd, but we understand the uniqueness of the circumstances that we've all been working through the past couple of months, and we asked the PUC not to rule on this for 60 days, and we don't anticipate it going into effect until September the 1st. If this goes into effect as it is filed, it would mean for the average residential customer approximately $1.14 increase per month. But as with any rate filing we make with the city, we're asking that you deny our request. And the reason why we file and then ask you to deny is because the Public Utility Commission has appellate jurisdiction over all the cities. And they determined some time ago that we should have system-wide rates. And so when you deny the case, then we would appeal that to the Public Utility Commission, and they hear the case on behalf of all of our customers. So I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have. Oh, okay. Yes. Exactly.
You want to make a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I propose that we go ahead and accept it as written in we file.
Accept?
No, the denial.
Yes, okay.
The denial.
Yeah. Okay. So a motion to accept the resolution denying the proposed change in rates of Oncor. Any second? All right. Second by Ms. Wisner. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Show that unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tam. Next, 8.2 of the discussion we had with the Stubbs from discussion action regarding a request for funding in the amount of $1,750 to contract with Rockville County to clear debris from the drainage ditch from 2770 Dowell Road to Hackberry Creek and declaring a public purpose for such expenditure. Lisa, can you?
Yes, this is related to the work session item. I did bring it before you today, even though there is a question about who is ultimately responsible for those roads, and listening to Ms. Stubbs, and then going out to the site and viewing that with the city engineer and having him tell me that, yes, there was a problem and, yes, it needed to be taken care of. I realize it's only $1,750 and there's still a question about who's responsible for maintenance, but my thought was, in the meantime, we may be responsible for it, and the problem may be bigger and more expensive if it's not addressed. So my thought was to take care of it, and then as we figure out who's responsible for maintenance, if it's not ours, I don't have an issue sending the county an invoice for it later. They may or may not pay it, but you may have a different opinion. You may want to wait, but in looking at that, I just know that water can cause a significant amount of damage if left to do its own, if it's not draining the way it's supposed to, including the pavement damage, getting up underneath that roadway. So my thought was actually in paying this now to have the work done is to avoid a larger, more expensive problem down the road. And that's why I'm asking you for it now instead of waiting. I still do want to spend time and effort on probably having our city attorney work with the county and trying to figure out ultimately who owns and is responsible for maintenance on some of these outlying roads on our boundary line.
I have two questions. One, has anyone actually talked to Dennis or Commissioner Bailey about this to get his thoughts?
I let him know that this was an issue that we would have to be addressing with the county. I've had extensive conversations with County Road and Bridge, and we just seem to go around in a big circle. All they're telling me is that it's ours, and we can either take care of it or not take care of it, but it's ours. I've done a lot of research as far as going back and tracing paperwork, and I think we have to the middle of the road. I realize that's not practical to take care of half of a road and one side of a ditch. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're going to have to ultimately have some conversations with the county, and I'll let Judge Sweet know as well, and Dennis Bailey, that we're going to have to work this out one way or the other. If we're ultimately responsible, then we may need to work some kind of arrangement with them so that until such time as we're financially able to take care of this road and others.
Just to wrap up my questions, and then Michael, $1,750, I assume having someone from the county work on it's cheaper than just having some contractor.
Yes, generally that is the case. Usually they can do it. I've seen differences sometimes of half, and sometimes when I had trees cut back on the road, this price was a tenth using the county
I believe
because it was a private contractor.
Fair enough. Just want to ask the question. Michael, yeah.
So there are really two issues here, as I see them. What I understand what the county is claiming, they're looking at, I think it's 43.106. The 43 is the annexation chapter, and they're claiming when a municipality proposes, to me that's key word, proposes to annex property, and it includes a road, they have to take all of the road, not just half of it. Well, and that's why I asked how they came into the city. I don't see a voluntary petition for annexation as the municipality proposing it. It could be, that would potentially be a fact issue that a judge or jury or somebody would have to decide what the word proposes means. But I don't really see the city proposing to annex something when citizens come to it and ask, can we be inside your city limits? So that is a debatable issue. So I think there is a legal issue of that, and a fact issue. Every single lawsuit, it doesn't matter if it's criminal, family, whatever, I think it's very important for anybody who's going to understand anything legal to get this. Every single lawsuit, no matter what the subject is, always a fact issue and always a legal issue. Can always be broken into those two. Give you a great example. It's against the law in Texas to run a red light. Okay? That's the legal issue. If we have, hey, you know what, 4 people saw the light, everybody says it was red, there's no fact issue. It's against the law to run a red light, case is over, Judge. The second one is a fact issue. We have 3 witnesses say the light was red, 2 witnesses say the light was green. Well, we know it's against the law to run a red light in Texas, but was it red or was it green? Now we have to have a judge or a jury to hear the evidence, listen to the witnesses, and decide what they think it was at the time, red or green. So same thing here. It'll be an issue of whether or not proposing is we initiating it or the property owner initiating it. I don't really see how a municipality can propose it when it's been brought to us and requested of us. So that's the first issue. The second issue is a bigger concern, and of course, the city attorney is never popular. To a certain extent, if the city attorney is never popular, you know he or she is doing a good job. Because this is its use of public funds. Whether or not it's good or bad is completely legally irrelevant. The question is it a public purpose that is served over a private benefit? There's three tests, or three portions to the test of whether or not use of public funds is okay. That's the first one. The second one, does the city retain control over the funds until whatever it's being spent on is done? And then third is, what did the city receive a return benefit? That's not actually the same thing as a public purpose. Public purpose can be served potentially without getting a return benefit. So that right there is the three-part test for whether or not it's okay for public funds to be spent. So here's the situation. This is what I'm hearing, one property owner that would be benefiting from the public use of funds. Doesn't mean it doesn't serve a public purpose, because I heard some very good points about school buses and things like that, and whether they're our, or school buses that serve our children or not. That would be something we would need to dig into. So arguably, there may be a public purpose. I think in this situation, whether we pay the county or whoever, we retain funds, control of the funds until it was finished. But third, what would be the return benefit? Would the return benefit be, citizens can use the roads, who would control, things like that. All I'm saying, I'm not saying don't spend it, but those are things that I think the council should consider from a legal standpoint, and then tangentially related, certainly a corollary, not exactly the same thing, is this what the council is going to do for every single property owner in the city that is in this situation? Now, if the council wants to do that, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. There's no problem treating one party differently than another party. But it's kind of one of those things, once you start down the road or the pathway of handling something a certain way, you've got to have a really good reason to not handle it that exact same way the next time, and the next time, and the next time, and the next time. So really, the first time you are kind of setting a bit of a precedent for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. Again, I'm not telling you what decision to make. It's your decision. But I have to, it's my job to advise the council to think about these things. And with those factors in mind, the council makes their decision.
And if I can just tag onto that just a little bit, Michael and I don't always agree on everything. He looks at it from the legal standpoint. I try to look at it from a practical standpoint. And to me, the return on that would be that if we do turn out to be responsible for the roads, and looking at the paperwork, I think we're responsible for at least that side of it. I hate to see a $1,750 problem turn into a $17,000 problem or a $27,000 problem. So that was my point in getting it done. As for setting precedent, I think until we solve the issue of who owns which roads on our counties, on the city ETJ lines, we just have to take one of these at a time. As there is an issue, we'll just have to consider each one individually. Right now, this is the only one I'm aware of. I'm hoping we'll solve this before anything else comes up. But again, my issue is just I don't want this to become a bigger problem and become more of, right now it's a ditch issue and a drainage issue. I just don't want it to become a pavement issue or turn into something larger and more expensive.
If we do end up owning the entire roadway, that would be different. Then we're just taking care of the street that we own. But, that would be, we're agreeing, if we say, oh, okay, county, I agree with you, I see what your standpoint is. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, because it may be a battle that we don't necessarily want to fight and say, okay, county, I see what you're saying, but we'll own it for that whole, however much that annexation was, we'll own it for the whole roadway, not just for one tract of land.
Do we have any documentation from Rockwall County as to what roads are now in our responsibility?
We're working on that. Well, I've been working on it for at least 3 months. I really think legal's going to have to get involved, so I think Michael is going to have to start discussions with maybe their attorney, and they're going to have to look at those annexation documents. It might be that they have to get somebody, either a planner, engineer, or someone else to find out exactly where those boundary lines are, and then I think in the end, we're probably going to end up having to come to some kind of arrangement with the county, an agreement, interlocal or something, to really get settled on who maintains and how, and what that maintenance means.
Stubbs.
And this is just from my perspective, and I'm not trying to take sides. I really did try to look at it, and they know I've told them no first for many times, but trying to look at the big picture of things, they just happen to be the lot that is almost adjacent to that creek. They're getting debris all the way upstream, so it's coming down from lots and lots of different properties, and it's just ending up in their ditch where it happens to go flat rather than drain this way. Of course, that culvert they mentioned is also contributing to the issue, and we're not solving that here. We're just trying to clean out that draining to get the grade right so that it will flow in the...
So will the $1,700 include a...
Yes, it will clean it out and grade it so that it will drain properly.
Still to a 10-inch culvert.
Yeah.
Right.
It does not solve the culvert issue.
It's the smallest diameter, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's
How
a-
many culverts down are only 10 inches or not as, how many do you know? There's 4.
Four.
How much does your culvert cost?
Individual culverts are actually owned by the property owners. So the road base for their driveway that crosses over the drainage is actually owned by the property owner. So that'd be public funds for private property, which we can't do.
Whenever a street does improvements and they tie into someone's driveway, they repair that, right? I mean,
That's a question for Mr. Hollow.
yeah, that's, I'm wondering, it seems like we have a third aspect of this. We have engineering, we have legal, and then we also have personal relationships that maybe could help this situation. I don't know, that may be optimistic, but it seems there's enough ambiguity here that if we reach out to our county friends, that they'll get a little help. They've been helpful before.
I definitely think that we need to have you and Mr. Bailey and Mr. Holla and Mr. Bailey's attorney sit down and come up with what the exact problem is. And by just cleaning out the culvert is only going to be a stopgap measure. And as far as expediency and getting it done, the last time it was cleaned out was, what, 2012?
2012.
So that's 8 years ago. So I think whatever might happen in the next 3 months or whatever it would take to meet with them would be worth it, because the ramifications are going to be, as Mr. Hall has said, we're going to have a lot of folks say, can you come clean my ditch? Because we've set that precedence.
And right now, it's just really bad because of the rain. But we're coming up on June.
Can we amend as written? Can we direct you as?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we give direction to staff to work with the Rockwall County attorney and the what are they called? The Road and Bridge Department, along with the county commissioner, to determine the level of responsibility for the properties in question, in the road in question, Dowell Road.
This can include road, drainage,
All right-of-way maintenance.
and everything cross on who is responsible for what. Just so I will sympathize with you, I'm
that mean you'll second my motion?
Well, I was about to say, is that an amendment to your motion or whatever? Is that what you call that? Help me out here.
No, I'll second. I mean, I just want to make
Okay.
sure.
To include associate, yes.
Right.
We just make sure that when we say a road, what encompasses that road? Is it drainage on either side? Is it the culverts? Is it,
So this is direction to staff at this point, right?
Yes.
Okay, so no need.
Discussion.
Huh?
There's a motion and a second. We're about
Oh,
discussion.
right, recent. Okay, motion and a second.
so I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on this?
Yeah, I have some discussion. So we have two very concerned citizens came up to us today saying they have an issue, they have a public safety issue. Now, as far as a financial liability standpoint, if you had to guess, Lisa, I hate to put you in this position, but on a percentage of 0 to 100, how much do you believe would be our responsibility?
Looking at the annexation documents and just looking at what we annexed based on the surveys with those annexation ordinances, it looks like that we have half of the road, right to the middle of the road.
So the
So
section
that would include the
affect-
ditch on their side. That would include half to the middle of the road on the pavement.
So the section that's affecting them directly, from the documents you were looking at, looks like it's going to be 100% our liability.
That's what I see at this particular moment, based on the information that I have.
So
What's
the
in
question
question
is-
is what the county did in 2010 when they did those prescriptive easements. Did that wipe out any responsibility that we have? I hope so. Maybe it did, but I don't know for a fact.
So we have our citizens here who said that the school bus couldn't deliver their children to their house because it was a safety issue. And it's potentially going to be 100% of our liability. And if it's not, we could send the county an invoice, correct?
You could.
So for me, it's a public safety issue. I don't want any of my citizens to walk outside their front door and their kid be afraid to go across the driveway. And if it turns out to be our liability in the end, consequentially, we're going to have to be in that position.
This incidences have been once, and how many years have you guys been there? As far as the bus incident, Mr. Dawes, how long ago was that?
That was in 2018. I think it's
Mrs. Stubbs, I got a question for you. I'm sorry. When it does it back up all the way to the bridge?
Oh, yes. Right.
So to the road base of the bridge that crosses Hackberry Creek?
That's not the way it is. I think we're looking at the problem down the road, it's not going to be what that's us. And I think if we go in and clear out that culvert, it's going to help a little bit. But it's not addressing the root of the problem. So that's my concern. Well, if it's not involved, then let's get it done.
They're prescriptive. Yeah. That's for you to figure out. Oh, I'm just telling you, that's what the, I'm just talking about.
We still have a motion. Second, any discussion? Anything else on the discussion part? On the motion that's on the table right now, want to take a stab at it?
I said, direct staff to work with Rockwell County to include the city attorney and the Rockwell County Road and Bridge Department and county commissioner to determine the responsibility for maintenance of Dowell Road and associated infrastructure.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So that 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Mr. Dowell? 8.3, discussion and direction of staff regarding moving forward with discussions with City of Terrell representatives as related to developing a memorandum of understanding between the cities of McLendon-Chisholm and Terrell. The mutual benefit of both cities is related to future plans for McLendon-Chisholm to become a retail water and/or sewer provider for portions of McLendon-Chisholm city limits and/or McLendon-Chisholm ETJ. Lisa.
Again, this is related to our work session item when we had the gentleman from Terrell and the man property owner and developer here. And I am just looking for direction at this time. We've had several meetings, but we're just kind of at that point where the next step would be that memorandum of understanding that would need to be developed. So that is me spending more time working on that. I don't want to bring it to you if it's not what you want. It's not a binding document, but it is something that, it's a little bit of a commitment in that, we're going to explore it further and we're going to see if it's financially feasible. And it's also going to require me to work with our city engineer and our city planner so that I can get some numbers as far as what would be needed for capacity to serve certain areas. So at some point in time, we'll have to decide how far do you want to bring that line in? Do you just want to serve that man property, or do you want to be able to have the ability, and this is what I would recommend, is to go ahead and have the ability to serve other areas in that general vicinity. That could even include areas that are on the other side of 548 in our ETJ, Blue Bonnet, High Point areas, things like that. The more, my viewpoint is the more control you have over your water, the more you're going to be able to control the development, and you may even entice people to move or to request annexation into the city if you've got some control over some of those public utilities. So I'm just looking for direction before I spend a lot of time and effort, and I don't want to spend any, consulting money on it if you're not interested in moving forward.
Well, I agree. I mean, you and I have talked about the importance of owning water for a long time.
I think it's important for your public safety department too, as far as, we talked about water pressure a little bit and reliance on maintenance, hydrants.
Yeah.
It could be either or, actually. Water definitely, I think the man property is going to need sewer for sure. But, if we can bring sewer up from that way and we can potentially serve other developments, I think that would be wise for us to look at that as well.
Can you give us just a ballpark idea of cost for talking to the engineer?
It's $180 an hour. I would suspect that there would be 1 or 2 weeks worth of work into it at minimum.
Hours.
That's a ballpark guess. I would need to provide them information as they give me the questions. So if we're looking at, say, just the High Point CCN area, CCN is a convenience, certificates of convenience and necessity for water. So we've got lots of small water suppliers around here. So we've got High Point, we've got RCH, there's Blackland, there's even Poetry off to another area. So all these little water supplies are individual providers, retailers right now. So if we just start with one, I'd recommend just starting with the High Point area that's served in that southern portion that heads into Kaufman County. But, you know, the further we can bring it up into our city, I would think the better.
The part that the main plant that
Right now it's in the ETJ. There is potential for it to be in the city. I can't promise you it will be in the city, but there is potential. If Terrell became the wholesaler and we became the retailer, we would bill for water. It would become a revenue source long term.
So does this affect our working relationship with the North Texas Central Water? Our water down from Rockall, does that hurt us, help us?
No, the agreement that Terrell has would have to be redone with North Texas to include us as a retail provider. They would be the wholesaler, we'd be the retailer. I don't expect things that are going to be going north towards Rockall are going to change very much, just because that area is a little bit more established than the area that's kind of entering into that Kaufman County area. So I don't know that we'll ever be able to fully serve the entire city limits, is what I'm saying. But I think starting with that southern portion is a good place. You know, even Sonoma Verde, there's no CCN on Sonoma Verde, and the way that was left is that there is a contract with RCH Water Supply, and I don't want to go too far into it because that's not specifically on the agenda, but we're in a position actually, I have to have a way to get the water to Sonoma Verde, but if I can bring the water up from the south and we can connect that way, we could actually be the retail provider for that neighborhood as well.
What budget does this come out of? Or what line item, rather?
We have a budget for engineering. I think we only budgeted, most of our engineering costs and our planner costs are paid for by developers.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we only budgeted about $15,000 for engineering this year.
To me, I mean, for what it's worth, I think it's worth pursuing because Terrell is coming up to our doorstep, whether we like it or not. I mean, their houses and density and all that stuff is going to be right here. One of the benefits of that is the opportunity to be a water retailer. We have to deal with everything else, the traffic, everything that goes with it. But if we could get some of the water that they're, my understanding, allowing us to potentially tie into to our benefit, then that's a win.
And we're not asking you to make those long-term decisions right now. This is just getting us a little bit further down the line to discover if it's even feasible. You know, that's what this is. It's just we're going to have to give them some capacity numbers. We're going to have to look at build out in various areas to determine what areas are practical to service. I can't tell you specifically that we're just going to do just the man property, but you know, the engineer can kind of help me look at that and decide, well, actually if we bring up the line up here, we could do sewer and water for XYZ neighborhoods. Whether they're there now or whether, you know, they're future planned, or maybe we have development agreements in place with some of them, or maybe it's just raw land and we don't have anything there. But they would need to look at that whole, probably the southern part of our city, NETJ area, and look at that and just kind of determine what's even feasible to think about we might be able to service, and what do those numbers look like as far as housing units. I think it's money well spent.
Well, to Nathan's point, I mean, you had said 1 to 2 weeks, which is roughly $4,300 to $8,600.
If you wanted to commit to up to 80 hours for engineering, and then I can always bring it back to you if we thought we were going to need more than that. We can keep track of it.
What do you get for that? I mean, for 2 weeks of engineering, what does that look like?
As far as,
As far as what do we get? I mean, is it just opinions or is it designs and?
no, it's not, I don't think it's going to be design. I think it's going to be them looking at our comprehensive plan, which needs to be updated. But looking at our comprehensive plan, looking at our development agreements, just determining what our future housing could possibly look like. You want to make sure that you have the capacity. So if they do it too short, then I can't make it any bigger later because the infrastructure will already be in place. Water tower, whatever it is, will already be in place. I don't know if we're going to need ground storage towers, what have you, but we just need to determine mostly what kind of capacity that we need. And our engineer can speak engineer to their engineer, and that's something that I can't do.
Right. Nor can I. That's right. So, not really a motion, I guess, right? Just direction to staff.
Just direction to, at some point, if you want to do that, we'll bring you back that memorandum of understanding when it's time for council to consider it. We probably have another workshop in between there as well, just to kind of get you up to speed. But for right now, I just need I'm kind of at that point where I really can't go any further. I'm not comfortable going any further until, you all kind of tell me that you're at least somewhat interested in becoming a water retailer. And I'd like your, I guess, a nod of approval to spend the funds.
Can part of that expenditure be a report to us as what we were talking about earlier as to where those other developers
Sure.
are? And so we can get the whole big picture at one time?
Absolutely.
So we would know
Yes.
what we're looking at?
I think that's a great idea.
So if I'm looking at the right line in the budget, it says we have about $8,000 remaining in engineering towards till the end of the fiscal year. I don't know if that's right.
That sounds about right. We haven't spent that much this year on engineering. You might look at the other parts of the budget, though, where it looks at the revenue that's come in this year, and we're having a good year. So building permits are already met our over and above. I think we're about 130% for building permits. Our sales tax is up. So I wouldn't recommend you spend it if I didn't think it was worthwhile. I mean, we can get them to provide some kind of a report. I can't define the report right now. But we can certainly get you something that shows what the results are.
I'm interested to hear more about it. I just don't want
Okay. I can talk to him and bring you something back if you like. You can consider it the next meeting.
I'd like
Yeah.
to make a motion to postpone item 8.3 to the next meeting.
Is it a motion or is it just the direction to staff that she comes to the next meeting with that information? Direction of staff.
Either way.
That's fine.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to provide us with the additional information as requested.
That's fine. Anyone second that? Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Aye. So that unanimous. All right, 8.4, Discussion, direction of staff regarding issuance of a request for qualifications for design-build services for fire department public safety facility to be located in city-owned property adjacent to City Hall, and possible renovation of Station 2 located on FM 548. Chief, I'll hand it over to you.
Do you have any more questions? This is carryover from the workshop. Again, we're just getting direction from council to go ahead and move forward with our RFQ of design build, and to move forward within that RFQ, it'll actually state the City Hall property, what we call the City Hall property, to put that address and everything there for the RFQ.
The only question I had, which I don't even think needs to be asked, but I just want to ask it, are these RFQs going out to people that specialize in building fire departments? Okay. Or fire stations, rather. All right.
When it goes out, there's going to be all the requirements that they have to meet in order to be able to.
But there's, I mean, when I went to TML things and all that, there's always those set architectural firms that kind of, that's their thing, right? So is that who you're reaching out to? Okay.
We can send them directly to architect or design build firms if we want to, but we'll also publish so that
Right,
others
I
that
got
we're
you.
not
It's
aware
kinda
of will
open-ended.
see it and have the
Understood.
opportunity.
Receipt. Okay. Very good. That's it. Unless anyone has any other comments, Chief, go ahead and proceed with that RFQ with Lisa, and look forward to seeing what she
That
has.
also includes possibility of the remodel of
548, absolutely. And if, TxDOT doesn't care, yeah, that's awesome. And actually, the whole budget, right? I mean, you have the RFQ, there's two components. There's the build, and then the whole budget of public safety, right? Potentially, which I guess is another discussion. If you have the stations we're talking about, the actual structures themselves, and the ability to spend incremental money, whatever that's left over, can go towards public safety.
Correct.
Okay. So at some point, I guess that's a different discussion than the RFQ. So, but it's all direction, right? So, okay. Very good. Thank you. 8.5, discussion action regarding an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances by amending various provisions contained in Chapter 8, offenses and nuisances. Lisa?
Yes, so this is staff trying to get caught up on these ordinances we were actually started on a couple of years ago, and we just didn't get very far. So Councilmember Hodges worked with us on Chapter 8, and then I also had some input from the mayor on Chapter 8. So what you see in your packet is the proposed changes. So the red, is it red and underlined, Shelley, or just red? Okay, so you should have the strikes as far as what we're taking out, and the red and the underline for what is going in. That should be in your packet under the revised Chapter 8, offenses and nuisances. So the first part of that, they're combined. You'll see the ordinance for the first 2 pages, and then the remaining part of that document are the proposed changes. There's not much we're taking out. Some things will get moved to another chapter, but most of this is just cleaning it up. And then also tightening up those nuisance ordinances so that we can have a more effective code enforcement. They're kind of loosely worded as is, and it's difficult to have action type of enforcement. So this will allow us to actually send out letters and be very specific about what the problem is, and also hold up better if it gets to a court stage. The other part in there that's new that we didn't put in there at all, it wasn't in there at all in any way before, was solicitation permits. Solicitation was only addressed previously as if somebody asked you to leave the property, you had to leave the property. So this would actually require a permit. And whether Chief likes it or not, I actually made him responsible for those permits so he can do background checks on solicitors and that sort of thing. It would actually have to go through his office. When we amend the fee schedule, we'll have to set a fee for that permit. This doesn't set the fee. It just says that there will be one. And if you want me to go over anything more specific on that, I do have most of the major changes here in front of me as far as significant changes. Firearms was another change. As far as discharging a firearm, it takes it from a 2.5-acre requirement to a 5-acre requirement. stronger wording about littering and maintaining premises, so we can do code enforcement on that. Disposal of bulky materials has to be controlled by the property owner. Building material waste is addressed. Mud on streets is addressed. I actually think that was in another chapter, but we put it here because we thought it was appropriate. Let's see here. No dumping grounds. Lots of on trash and no littering from a passenger or someone passenger in a vehicle or driving a vehicle. We can't really enforce that now because we don't have the ability, but we may be able to, if we go public safety one day. Let's see here. The rest of it, I think, is related to solicitation regarding the permit requirement. Junk vehicles is also addressed. We redefined some of the junk vehicles to include agricultural equipment that was not in use, rusty tractors, trailers, et cetera, and other types of trailers. Not just vehicles, but we kind of expanded the definition of vehicle. Hang on a second. Oh, you're just saying it's in the wrong place? Oh, okay. Because I don't think we changed anything on the ordinance itself. We can make sure it's in the right place.
So is that an ordinance that, that's already a state law, right? Or federal law?
The synthetic.
Huh?
Are you talking about the synthetic?
Yeah. So
I think so.
does that need to
You
be
can
in the
just call it
city
that
ordinance? Does it even matter? We don't overrule.
We didn't change anything. We just left that one as is.
Yeah.
I think we probably just need to renumber something, but we didn't change any wording on that section.
On that same document, page 16 to 29, is that the one?
It's in the public packet, so. You have to scroll down. We put the ordinance and the red lined all together, so you have to scroll down past the ordinance language, and it's in the body of the, yeah. If you need more time with it, it's not an issue to bring it back next time, if you want to take longer to review. Yes. It's new or changed. Keep in mind, too, you can always amend it at any time, so it's not like this is a one and done. We can always bring it back if you feel something needs to be changed or something was left out.
I had a question in section 8.06.001, parentheses 4. It says abandoned agricultural equipment. Does that include people using wagons for yard art, or is it just abandoned equipment?
You kind of get in a sticky situation there. I think this would be something left in a field, rested for a long period of time. I mean, it's a little bit subjective, but
Is there a way we can get that cleaned up so that way, if someone did specifically put something in their yard as a yard art purpose, that doesn't conflict with it?
I think it's based on lot size too. So if it's just maybe referring to things that are kind of in a larger field rather than in a small suburban neighborhood.
Yeah, no, it's just vague. That's all.
Yeah, we can certainly look at it if you want.
I don't think any of this is, gosh, I'm trying to think. If the input you had about the cannabis or synthetic cannabis, cannabinoid, and yours for clarification, that language, does anyone else object to approving this with changes and then the ability to make other agenda items down the road if we see other things we'd like to see, just to quick kicking the can down the road and just get it done. All right? Okay. A motion for that? Want to propose?
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Show it unanimous. 8.6, discussion and action regarding a resolution repealing resolutions 2016-12R, adopting Robert's Rules of Order, 2017-24R, adopting a code of conduct, 2017-20R, adopting a form of acknowledgement of compliance requirement and commitment for members of the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, and Resolution 2018-20, adopting an amendment to the code of conduct. This was a request by Mayor Short, and I would like to suggest that in his absence, we postpone this discussion until he's here to participate. Does that require a motion, Lisa?
Yeah, it's action. Yeah, it's action.
Go ahead.
So Mayor Pro Tem, for item 8.6, I'd like to postpone to the next meeting for further review and full presence of the council, including the mayor.
Okay. And a motion on the table? All right. Mr. Hodges, seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
8.7, discussion action regarding a resolution adopting a council rules of procedure. This was requested by the mayor as well. Same discussion on, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Another motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll wait till
Oh, go
after you
ahead.
make the
Go ahead.
motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to postpone the discussion and action on item 8.7 pending the full presence of council, including the mayor.
All right. Motion on the table.
I'll second.
All right. And a second. All in favor?
Could I
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Discussion.
Discuss one
Yes.
thing. I think that if anybody does have any comments, they need to provide those to Lisa
Ahead of time.
before the next meeting, if you have any recommended changes or amplifications.
Outstanding. I agree. All right. All right, motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. That concludes the agenda items up to reports. The next one is building official report for April 2020. Lisa, you want to run us through that? It's all pretty self-explanatory.
We are well ahead on building permits. I believe we're at about 135% or so of expected revenue. Lot inventory is good, and we expect that trend to continue through the rest of the year and into next fiscal year. Sure.
Could you include on this report
Sure.
and that way we know without having to cross reference to go to the budget directly? Does that make sense?
Yes. What's that? I don't think it's on this building permit, though. Do you want them fiscal year to date?
Yeah.
I think we keep them calendar year to date, but I think we can do it fiscal year if that helps.
That's what I would prefer.
Sure. Shouldn't be an issue.
Anything else on the building official report? All right, moving on to budget report 2020. Does anyone have any comments, questions about that?
I just have one quick question for Lisa. On the development income, can we just share with the council, budgeted for 15,000, but we're sitting at 7,600.
Those are plat application fees. So Sonoma 4A and 4B came in a little sooner than we expected them to, so those are plat fees. We charge per lot.
Anything else? No? All right. On to the next report, which is Sheriff's Department report for 2020. I'm sorry, April. Any comments, questions about that? Negative. All right. CWTD report, again, April 2020. Anyone satisfied anecdotally and not hearing anything from citizens, I guess? No. All right. Chief, fire report. Anything you want to share? Anything unusual?
Not at this time.
The 2020 census response update.
I can go over that if you
Yeah.
like. I put this in here. This isn't one of our usual reports, but due to COVID-19, the census sort of got put on the back burner, and it hasn't been drawing the attention that normally we would kind of throw at it. And we just want to encourage people to continue responding for those people who haven't responded yet. The response rates I listed, there is a website out there that kind of lists response rates, and it breaks it down by counties and cities. Rockwell County has actually the best response rate in all of Texas. Heath is leading that with a 74.5%, and McLendon-Chisholm is right behind it with a 73.4% response rate, so I was pretty excited about that. But that still means that there are people out there that still haven't responded, so we just want to encourage them to continue to respond because we want everyone to be counted. Lots of funding on the line when the new census comes out. I think you can still go to census.gov, and there's some information there that will tell you what to do. You can also call them, but I'd be happy to put that together and bring it back next time or put it on the website.
Yeah, the website.
Sure. Okay. Not a problem, and people can always call me too, and we'll connect them. Sure.
Anything else, Lisa, from you?
Not at this time.
Chief, you good? Sir. Shelley? Good? All right. Michael? All right. Opportunity for council reports. Do you have anything? Let's start from the left and work across. No? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's crazy. Nothing here?
Nope.
Nope.
We're good.
All right. Time is 20:01. I'll call this, 8 p.m. and 1 minute. The meeting is adjourned. Yes, thank you.
Hadn't heard that word in a while.
Yeah, it's all over. It's so much. My kids even get it. Like it makes perfect sense.
Okay. Do you want to send us like an invoice, or do you just want me to write your information down? Or? Okay. First name? And just Manning, M-A-N-N. Okay. And just deputy services, is that what we want to call it, or? 26. Okay, and we're doing, is it 4 hours? Is that what? Okay. It could take up to a week, so we just kind of do checks about once a week. So. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll get it to you.